This is Dan Rogers, your host on We the People Town Square, coming to you from the center of the universe, the high plains of Texas, near the headwaters of the Prairie Dog Town Fork of the Red River. Hello, today is February the 20th of 2024, and we are here with Dr. Doug Frank, the Johnny Appleseed of election integrity. Doug, welcome.
Good to be with you. Had a great event last night. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we did. I thought it was a great event, and we had a lot of really good questions, and the public seemed to be really starting to wake up and engaged.
Yes. Last time I was here, I kind of gave an introduction to what the problems are in elections and met you for the first time, and then you invited me back. And so this time I included some more strategy than last time, and I think that invokes a response. People are like, well, wait a minute, if we do that strategy, what about this and what about that? And so it created a good, healthy dialogue, I thought. It was a little heated at a point or two, but I think in the end, everybody was shaking hands, and I think we have our eyes on the right goals.
Well, I think it's very difficult for the public and the voters to think that this could be happening. Nobody wants to admit that our vote may be being manipulated.
Yeah, especially in a small place like, Potter County or Randall County. You guys are like small, conservative, red communities, and it's like, there's no voter fraud here. We trust our clerks. I get it. I hear that sentiment all over the country. It makes perfect sense that local people would think that way until they learn that their election isn't being run locally. It's being run from the state.
Right.
Then they understand, wait a minute, it's not our local people we're concerned about. It's the fact that our election is not under our local people's control. And we exposed that last night, too, which I thought was an important step forward. I was showing some of the statistics that I had downloaded from the Texas Secretary of State website. And when I put some of them up on the screen, one of the county officials said, that's not correct. Well, that shows they don't even know their own statistics. And I'm not bad-mouthing them because as I travel the country, that's the same everywhere. The local gals, they tend to be women who are running the elections, are not really aware what's going on. They're so busy running the software, running the machines, running the electronics, and they're really not technically skilled people. They're more like CPA types and administrative types, and nothing wrong with that. But you're asking people without technical skills to run technical equipment, and then of course they don't understand the vulnerabilities that they have because they're not technical devices are not their specialty. Happens to be mine. I build electronics for a living, so that's why I don't trust anything electronic.
Well, and these people are, they're invested in the system, right?
Yeah.
So they're trained, they go to the courses and the trainings at the SOS, and they believe what they're told. They don't have any reason not to believe it. It's the state of Texas, right?
Yeah.
Well, they couldn't be giving them any misinformation. But the problem is the people that are training them probably don't know either, right?
Yeah, there's a phrase, I've met with hundreds of clerks around the country, and maybe every fourth or fifth clerk that I meet personally with, I'll show them evidence from their county, and I red pill them. They wake up and they're going, oh my goodness, I had no idea this was happening. And when they're aware, the very next response, you can see it in their face. The blood drains from their face is fear. It's like, oh no, how can I go against the state? How can I go against the County Clerks Association? And one of them used a phrase which I've been carrying ever since. It was a clerk in Missouri, I remember. She looked at me and she says, Dr. Frank, we were all hypnotized. And that is exactly right. That's why they all say the same things. I say this, and it's not in a derogatory way. It's an observing way. I meet with so many clerks, and they all say exactly the same phrases. It really is like they're hypnotized. And it's because they are centrally trained. And the voting companies teach the clerks what to say, and the clerks then teach the head clerks what to say, and then the head clerks teach the local clerks what to say. And it's like a unanimous chorus of hypnotized folks. They're kind of brainwashed. Yeah.
Well, this is a long-term project that they've been working on, because before '06, I was an election judge for several cycles. And I thought we had just a beautiful system. It was simple. And it was a community event. And it engaged both parties. And we had no problems. But then here come the machines. And basically that kind of neutered the parties effectively because they weren't relevant anymore. They weren't needed in the elections with the electronic machines. And I think that had a huge negative impact. And then everybody just quit paying attention, right?
Yeah, we're lazy by nature, aren't we?
Yeah. So what happened is they created then these election administrative positions, which created a separate department in the county. It's no longer under an elected official like the county clerk or the tax assessor. So they pushed that off into a third party administrator position, which then they become important. Then they have their own employees. And then the county commissioners that are charged with choosing the election system in their county have pushed that off to another department.
They just defer to the EA. Yes.
They all defer to the EA,
yes.
So they don't have to think.
Yes.
But I'm like, why are we paying them?
Yeah.
That's their job, according to the Texas Constitution,
yes,
to choose the election system in their county. So what I've been trying to do is get them to do that, but they don't like that. And because they've invested in the EA position, no politician or elected official seems to ever be able to say that they made a mistake. My question is, how do we get them to understand that they've made a mistake?
Yeah, that's exactly the question. And I've learned that if you can get a copy of the voter rolls, give it to a local group of citizens, you don't need a large group, 10 people at the most. Run some simple algorithms on your data and go through the rolls, and you'll find certain anomalies. For example, you'll find people who are dead who voted. Wait a minute. How can dead people vote? You'll find people who don't live here anymore and they live in another state and they're voting in another state, but somehow they're voting here. You'll find those examples. So now once you've found those examples, you fully research them, make sure that they're not just mistakes or something. You then present them to those county commissioners and you say, look, this system you're using is allowing fraud and illegal voting to happen in our county. And every one of these cases of fraud or illegal voting is disenfranchising one of us from our constitutionally guaranteed ballot. So we can't use this system anymore. And once you've shown them that, you notice that we're not accusing them of wrongdoing. We're not saying you made a mistake. We're saying the system that the whole state's using, actually, so you're right along with the rest of them, the system is enabling this. So we need to cut the umbilical cord, not use the state system anymore. And then once you do that, they'll have all kinds of objections. They'll say, well, wait a minute, state law requires us to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can say, sure. There are lots of ways to comply with the state laws without being connected in real time to the state, and we can run our own election. In fact, in Texas, you guys have a huge advantage over a lot of states. It's already built right into your constitution. You're allowed to do hand counting your ballots, right? It's right there. I think it's called tallytexas.org. It teaches you how to do that. It's right in your state constitution. But even if you use the machines, I always tell people, I don't care how you do it, as long as you're in control of it. You can use jelly beans as far as I'm concerned. As long as you have full access to everything and you don't have to trust anything. There's a patriot in California, his name's Urson Russell. I really like what he says. He says the ideal election system is the one where you don't have to trust anything. Everything is verifiable. Everything is traceable, and everything is transparent. So the citizens can see every step. Any citizen has any question about any step, they have full access to look. There are elections. They should be that way. So that's once we found the fraud, once we've shown it to the illegal voting, or we've shown the flaws in the system. For example, last night I already showed your own clerks don't even know who voted in your own election. Okay, that should be enough already. How can we even know if our election is secure if we don't know who voted in our own election? So that alone should be sufficient. But if it's not, we can keep pushing. What I typically find is that commissioners are reluctant to make a stand until the public is aware and the public is activated. So in the end, you don't really win with the evidence. You don't really win with the argument. In the end, you win with when you've packed the commissioner meeting with overflow crowds. And I always tell people, make sure that when you're presenting your evidence at the commissioner meetings, that you're standing room only, and that you have the militia walking back and forth on the sidewalk outside, because they need to know you're dead serious about this, that this, you're not going to put up with it anymore. You're not going to tolerate your ballots being stolen from you anymore. So that's kind of what the trend.
Well, to me, I would think if I was a county commissioner, it would behoove me to want to make sure that my people's vote, my constituents' vote, was 100% accurate.
Yeah.
Because that's the foundation of our republic. Your voice, your vote is your voice. And if they take that away, we've lost our republic.
Sorry to tell you, brother, we've lost our republic. So people say, we got to protect our elections. Too late. We already lost them. We got to get back our elections. And that's not, you pointed out correctly, didn't happen just last year, or didn't just happen in 2020. That's been a gradual process. You made a great comment. 2006, you were still a judge, and they had the little Scantron machines, and everything was transparent, and you could verify everything. And by the way, that was a single day of voting too, wasn't it?
Yep.
Okay. Now you got weeks and weeks of advanced voting, where every day when people vote, the list of who voted is reported at night, every night. Anybody who wants to steal your election can track everything and say, okay, well, Dan didn't vote yet, so I'm going to stuff a ballot for him. You're giving away all the information, and it needs to be, I always tell people, the elections need to be completely opaque. Nobody can know anything until the polls close. And once the polls close, then everybody needs to be able to see everything completely transparent, and everybody needs to be able to trust the process. So fully transparent afterwards, fully opaque in advance. And I'm not against absentee voting and mail-in voting. I think that our military people are entitled to a ballot for sure. And I think most people agree with that sentiment. Right now, our military folks can fax their ballot in. They can email their votes in. But what's supposed to happen is when they do that, then you have a Republican and a Democrat both looking at that, and they fill in a ballot and they print the email and document everything. That's perfectly fine by me. A military person deserves a ballot more than me, I think. Sure. They're putting their life on the line. But, there are other good exceptions too, like a surgeon or a pilot, somebody who's not available on election day. I'm totally good. But it's a small percentage. And since it's a small percentage, your county EA can do due diligence on every ballot. She can make sure every ballot made it to where it was supposed to go, and make sure that came back from that person. She can call and follow up and say, did you send me back your ballot? Yep, I've got it here. I see your signature. That's good. And I'm not saying that isn't capable of having fraud still, but at least you can do due diligence, a reasonable diligence on those. But when you have no fault absentee voting for all your 65 and olders, I showed you the graph last night. You have a huge percentage of your ballots coming in at that age that are all by mail-in. And you saw the data I showed you last night for your own county. This is not me making anything up. You have 100% of your 72-year-olds voted. Something suspicious about that. I don't think that that's real. The turnouts are not that high. They should be 80 to 90% max for older folks. There's something up with that. And so we should investigate. Now, did I just prove there was fraud in your county? No, but I gave you statistics to tell you where to look. So now we form a team and we go investigate, and we'll find cases. I'll buy you lunch if I'm wrong, but I'm never wrong on this point because it's too obvious. There's something going on there. So you find the anomalies. We knock on the doors. My favorite example of an anomaly would be 4 people live at a house, 2 different last names, 2 Smiths and 2 Jones. All 4 of them voted. We find those all over the place. And what that almost always is the Jones moved away 3 or 4 years ago. They sold the house to the Smiths. And the Smiths are voting, good citizens, and the Jones live in Colorado now, and they're voting in Colorado, but somebody's still stuffing a ballot for them here. We find those cases. And when we find them, we don't just say, look at the fraud we found. No, we send a team to find the Joneses in Colorado, and we get them to sign an affidavit. No, I didn't vote there. In fact, we have a copy of their voting record in Colorado. So guess what? That's a vote in both places. That's fraud. And so we find cases like that. And all that is really doing is just exposing the fact, not that your county judge or your EA is corrupt. No. It's the system that's enabling that. Mm-hmm. And they don't have a way, even with their own tools, to stop it. So that's the argument we use. Why would you want to use a system that you can't protect yourself with? And then on top of that, then it's exploited statewide. Who cares about tiny little Potter County? Who cares? Well, if I can stuff 10 ballots in every one of your precincts, nobody notices. But how many precincts are there in your 254 counties in the state of Texas? If I stuff 10 ballots in every one of them, we're talking tens of thousands of ballots. Mm-hmm. I can shift any statewide election and nobody notices. It's like I can hide it in the noise.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the real problem. So somebody mentioned last night at the public meeting, which I usually make the argument, but I didn't need to because a citizen made it. Even if we didn't find any fraud in your county, why don't we make a stand in the state? Why don't we be the forerunners? Why don't we set the example of what a clean, locally controlled election can look like, fully transparent, and then other counties will join in. And that's been my experience as I travel the country, that when one county steps out, others will join them. Most notably, Northern California, the Shasta County was an example of that. 75,000 people in that county, very similar situation. And the commissioners voted to go all paper. Boy, did the state of California freak out, passing emergency resolutions, emergency legislation to stop other counties from joining in. And you and I were talking in the car. Why would the state care so much about how one tiny little county votes? Why would they have so much interest in that? And I think the answer is pretty obvious. They want to keep the control. Wait a minute, what are they controlling? Why do they want to maintain control? What is so important? Well, they like the system the way it is because it makes them feel like they're in control a lot of times. And they get to know right up to the minute how many people have voted and what the tallies are, and makes them feel like, a lot of secretaries of states I talk to, I don't think they're evil people. I think they feel like, well, gee, I can monitor the election. I can make sure it's safe. No, if you can monitor it, the bad guys can monitor it. And so, no, it's not a good move.
Well, I was on a call with the SOS on a training deal in our team system back when we were entering all the candidates. And they were just talking about how they, after the election's over and they take the thumb drives back and they upload those to the Secretary of State. And she said, we need those thumb drives uploaded as soon as you can, as soon as practicable, so that we can verify your vote. Verify the count, I think was her exact words. And I'm like,
Verify?
Verify? Do they have the data before the EA?
Yes, they do.
See, I wasn't aware of that. That just shocked me when she said that. But then things start making sense once you understand that.
Yeah, it makes sense why they want to have the machines.
That's right.
And if you ask your EA, she will swear up and down on a stack of Bibles, our machines are not connected to the internet.
That's right.
And she's not lying to you. But she doesn't realize that machine is not connecting to her local Wi-Fi. It's not connecting to her local network. It's got a cell phone modem, and it's calling directly to the cell phone tower. She doesn't know that. And, and the only way to know would be to take the back cover off and have a look. But she can't do that because it's certified. And if she takes that off, then the machine's no longer certified. There are other ways to know, which I hinted last night. I showed people the sensor they can buy on Amazon for $140 if they want. And they can see if the machine is communicating. That's a little vulnerable because it's just detecting all transmissions. So you need a clean room. You need to leave all your cell phones out of the room. And it's also vulnerable in the sense that the modem activity is controlled by software. And so it doesn't necessarily always come on. So you might not detect it in any given time. I encourage people on election day, for example, we've done this all over the country. Just take your cell phone out when you put your ballot through the machine, the tabulator that scans the ballot, just notice that a little hotspot pops up when you do that. It's that simple. A lot of places, not every state has the same machine, so that's not the same way, but that's a beautiful example. Why is that machine sending a transmission every time we run a ballot through it? That's interesting. And then, of course, like I mentioned last night in the movie Absolute Interference, the cell phone tower guy, the person who was installing 5G, recorded multiple elections in the state of Georgia where the machines were calling out and reporting the tallies constantly throughout the day. So we know that's true. And then I guess one more example of what you're saying is, I just like to give examples because I don't want people to think that this is just in one place. I'm giving multiple states of examples. In the state of Colorado, you can see that movie Selection Code about Tina Peters. Somebody called her and told her what the tallies were before she knew what they were. And she's the county clerk. And she's like, nobody else can possibly know this. I'm the first one who should be able to know. But somehow somebody from the state already knows. And they told me the results before I even had them. So that's where she started going, what's up with this? What's up with this? And so once we got forensic images of her machines, we showed that her machines had 36 modems in her machine. She had no idea even one of them was there. And they were contacting networks during the election. We have the logs of that. So and Tina Peters isn't a liar. She's a Gold Star mom. She's a patriot. She was running her elections as clean as she knew how. And she swore up and down, oh, no, our elections are secure, Dr. Frank. But she's one of the few clerks who's been willing to make a stand. There was another clerk in Colorado who also got forensic images. And when they did, they turned them over to the state and ran for the hills because they were afraid of getting prosecuted. But those forensic images also showed that the machines are on the internet. Their head clerks in the state know that they're on what they call an internal secure network. The machines are on this network. They admit it quite regularly. You have to corner them. So this phrase, the machines are not connected to the internet, that's a mealy-mouthed, lie. It's sort of like what the definition of is.
It's not connected to the internet.
That's right. Or I'll hold up my cell phone and I'll say, is my phone connected to the internet? And people say, oh, no. Well, now it is. Okay. Okay. And is it really the internet? No, it's really a cell phone network that can connect to the internet. And so it's a mealy-mouthed phrase that they use. And that's why they all say that exact same phrase. I've met with several secretaries of states and hacked into their secure internal networks right in front of their face via the internet. So the technical term is they face the internet. They're internet facing. And even though they aren't necessarily connected directly, they face the internet, which they're access points via the internet. And that's the problem. We just need to have, like you said, how simple was that in 2006? Everybody trusted it. You could verify everything. The only reason to have a complicated system now is to allow other people to have control of our elections. I can't think of a better reason. You're spending all this money for nothing, just to give it away.
Yeah, and I don't understand why they think they need a centralized database of voters at the state.
Well, that's interesting. That's a good question. So in 1993, the federal government passed NVRA, National Voter Registration Act, 1993. And that's when the federal government started encouraging states to use programs to register all their voters. They were trying to get everybody registered, which is a bad idea, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's what that started then. Then when HAVA passed in 2002, Help America Vote Act, part of HAVA was the federal government would go to a state and says, we'll give you money, but if we give you money, then you have to do the following. And all the states took the money, so all the states have to do the following. The following is the states are required to keep a centralized database. And it's purportedly so that they can keep them clean. They can police it, right? But what's ended up happening, let me back up. So the states are supposed to keep a centralized database. That doesn't mean that it's supposed to be up to the minute. And the way states originally implemented it, which is the way I'm not against it, is each county, maybe once a month, sends in a copy of their voter rolls. so the state can maintain it. And that's a handy thing because you could compare that at other states and see if people are voting in more than one state or things like that. I'm not necessarily opposed to that. But what happened is over time, the clerks are like, this is work. I don't want to have to do work. Let's make this automatic. Okay. And so then the state says, and by the way, we'll make it easy for you. If somebody moves from one county to another, we'll move them automatically in your rolls for you. And so the state starts offering you all these services. So why not go online? And in a world where everybody's honest and in a world where everybody's on the up and up, nothing wrong with that. Why not use modern equipment to make it easy? Except once you've done that, once you're live connected, now you're live hackable too. And since you have everything connected, all you need is any point of access and you're into the whole system. And that's what's, we were in the Capitol building in Missouri one day, and we hacked into their Capitol building through one of the thermostats. I use that as an exaggeration, but once you have a centralized system, any point of entry gets you into the whole system. It's a bad strategy. So that's why the state needs the centralized database, because of HAVA. But that doesn't mean they have to be live and up to date. But, it's good old free economy. Election companies came in and said, gee, we'll solve this problem for you and make this easy for you. We'll sell you this software. We'll automate everything. And bad players have seized that opportunity.
Well, think of the data that they're getting. So they get the counties to buy their software.
Yep.
And in return, they're getting everybody's voting data, right? They're getting every bit of information on every individual that's registered to vote.
Yep.
What could they do with that?
Can't imagine what they would do that. I can even take it a step further. Many states were in ERIC.
We were.
And in ERIC, not only did you give this non-government organization untraceable, unfoyable, you were giving them all your voter records. You were also giving them all your DMV records, including your signatures.
Yep.
So you're giving away everything, all this information. By the way, you didn't give it away. You paid them and gave them.
Yeah.
And basically 32, I think, or 33 states, something like that. This big, huge database. Are you kidding? That's modern. That's modern capital right there. Information is money in today's culture. You're giving away all that information, and then anybody who wants to exploit it can. ERIC was supposed to be, the way they sold it to the states was, we'll compare your data to other states, and we'll find the people that are in both states, and we'll help you clean up your voter rolls. And what they were supposed to be doing was giving the Secretary of State lists of people who were registered in more than one state so that they could clean it up. But what it ended up being was something quite different, because I've seen these lists. Instead of saying, you've got John Smith in your rolls, you should take him out because he's voting in Colorado. They weren't doing that. What they were doing, they were saying, here's a list of everybody that's recently moved to your state that's not yet registered. You need to get them registered. It was exactly the opposite. And since it's an NGO and it has a bias, it was saying, here are a bunch of Democrats that moved into your state who you don't yet have registered. Get them registered. They were basically harvesting all those moves in a biased way. So many of the states, I remember Frank LaRose, who is the Secretary of State of Ohio, where I'm from. He says, we're getting rid of ERIC because we thought we were going to be cleaning up our voter rolls, but our voter rolls are dirtier now than they were beforehand. And, I'm not a fan of LaRose, but still he said the truth at least. And that's been the state all around the country. I showed you guys that last night, that your voter rolls here in sweet little Potter County and Randall County, your voter rolls are growing faster than your population. Well, something's wrong with that. And especially since 2014, when you guys added motor voter, that's when it really took off.
Well, that's actually what got me motivated and realized something's not right. It was a day after the 2020 election, November the 9th, I think it was. And I get a call from our EA at the time, and she said, what do you think of the results? And I happened to be staring at my computer screen. I was looking at Travis County, and I had already looked at Potter. I think we were like 69%. or something like that for Trump. And I'm like, that's wrong.
Should have been higher than that.
Way higher. Travis County, I just got back from, picked up 5,000 Trump signs that I had made on a trailer. Everywhere I went in Travis County, Trump signs everywhere. I'm thinking Trump could win Travis, right?
Yeah.
And I had these Trump trailers out all over the state. We were selling Trump merch to raise money to help candidates get elected.
Yeah.
And, we did $750,000 in 45 days selling T-shirts and caps.
Wow. That's good. You're
That's
good promoter.
gross.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm thinking, but I'm looking at the Travis County data, 80% voted for Biden. I'm like,
no.
Now, I used to live in Austin.
No.
And the people in Travis County are no different than the people here.
Right.
They are not as liberal as they're made out to be.
Yes.
There are some liberal people there.
Well, of course, everywhere there.
And it's probably 60-40.
Yeah.
Maybe 63-37, something.
Yeah.
It's not 80-20.
No way.
Anyway, I get this call, and it struck me because she asked me what I thought, which I thought was very strange coming from a EA.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? And she said, well, it looks about right. And I said, really? And then she said, well, the Democrats registered 4,000 new voters right before the election.
Huh.
And I'm thinking to myself, no. I never saw anybody registering people to vote. I would have heard about it.
Yes.
I would have seen them. I'm everywhere. And I just said, there's only one thing I know. And she says, what's that? I said, Democrats are even lazier than Republicans. And I didn't think any more about it. And then a few months later, my wife gives me this article about Potter County taking money from Zuckerberg's
Ding, 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 ding. CTCL.
Center for Civic Life.
Center for Tech and Civic Life.
Yeah.
CTCL.
And
They took the Zucker bucks.
That's right, $87,000.
Yes.
So I asked.
Now you understand.
The light bulb went off.
Yep.
That's when I realized we got a real problem.
Yes.
So we have we've asked the question of our Commissioner's Court where that money went, how is it dispersed?
Yeah.
Crickets. Why won't they tell us?
I'm so glad you brought this up. So you need to FOIA all their electronic communications between your public offices and CTCL. We did that in Wisconsin, and we learned some really interesting things. Turns out CTCL was, for 6 months, we have a 6-month email chain between CTCL and the county clerk of Milwaukee in Wisconsin, them developing a ballot harvesting system, which was illegal. We have them in writing, developing it. We put all of that right into public evidence and public testimony before their legislature, showing them all this stuff. There was an interesting app. You could walk up to a house, a mule, somebody who's stuffing ballots could walk up to a house and see who's registered to vote here. Oh, nobody's registered to vote here. Well, who lives here? Okay, that's who lives here. Boom, now they're registered to vote. How did that happen? Well, the way they did it is that they went to the county records to find out who owns it. They went to the census to find out the information about that person, and they registered and vote. They went to the DMV. I'm not kidding. The software shows this, so I'm not making this up. Go to DMV to get the signature, and they complete a digital application and submit the digital application, and it's automatically cleared through the registration system of the state. And then the next button the guy pushes is to order absentee ballots for those people. People who don't even know they're in the rolls. Absentee ballots have been ordered for them. But here's the kicker. At the same time it orders the absentee ballots, it also fills in the field that says when the absentee ballot was mailed. So nobody ever mails an absentee ballot to that person because it was already ordered and mailed. So now all he has to do is just print it and drop it in a Dropbox. And he has the signature because he has all the digital information, everything. And he gets paid per ballot that he delivers. It's a very simple system. We discovered it because the county clerk was doing the audit afterwards. And she said, and we have this in writing, they received 120,000 more ballots than they mailed out. Oops, that's a problem. The mail records showed that they had mailed a certain number of ballots, but they had received 120,000 more than that. Whoops, because that's a separate system. So if you're only working inside one system, they can hide stuff like that. But when you're combining multiple systems, it exposes those little tricks. We were talking with your producer a minute ago, and he was saying, yeah, it's fun to be like a detective, looking at the numbers, and something doesn't line up. And that's when you learn something. I bring that up because we have it on record that CTCL was working with the county clerk of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to develop an illegal ballot harvesting program, and that's all been put in public testimony and in the Gableman report, which is a judge that Wisconsin hired. Anyway, I brought that up as an example of CTCL, and guess what? Little sweet Potter County, you think you're out here in the beautiful, which you are out here in this beautiful country and good people. You took $87,000 from that same organization, the one we have on record as cheating the elections. In other places, they're cheating you here too. That's another reason why you need to just cut the umbilical cord from the state system. Run your own election. I don't have anything against your gals. They came to the meeting last night. They seem like nice ladies, honest ladies. Nothing against them. I trust them more than I trust your state.
Yeah.
So cut the umbilical cord of the state, run your own election, run it in a transparent way that any citizen can satisfy any of their concerns with, and you're good. Then the next thing that'll happen is your EA will say, oh, but we have to follow state law. And that is not true. And that was a big part of my talk last night. I explained near the end. You don't have to follow any law that violates your constitutional rights. And I was just with Chris Ann Hall the other night, and she corrected me. They're not our constitutional rights. They're our God-given natural rights enumerated in the Constitution. We don't get our rights from the Constitution. We get our rights from God, and it's natural law. So, but in shorthand, we say constitutional rights. So any law which violates your Constitution, the rights enumerated in the Constitution, you have the right to nullify. And I gave several examples of that last night, like when the governor says we're going to put a limit on whether you can carry your guns or not, people just didn't comply and they nullified those laws. You can do the same thing because your God-given natural rights enumerated in the Constitution supersede any state policy. So you can just simply say, you want to close our churches? We're not closing them. You want us to not carry guns? We're not going to comply. You want us to turn over our constitutional voice? You want us to turn over our vote? We're not going to comply. Why? Because we've just shown you that you're manipulating the outcomes. We've just shown you that fraud and illegal voting is happening because of the system. We're not going to willingly relinquish our constitutional voice to a system that's disenfranchising us from our voice. So no, we're not going to comply. And go ahead, sue us. Okay, come and take it. Come and take our guns. You want our guns? Come and take them. We're ready for you. Okay, and same with our ballots. We need to have that same attitude towards our ballots. That in the end, when you think about it, our ballots is how we protect our guns.
That's right.
And so it's really the same.
That's why I think it's so important, and I've been so adamant about doing something about that because as a county chair, that's our role is to run the primary election. And if I can't run it properly, I'm not doing my job.
I didn't remember that. You're the county chair of the Republican Party?
Mm-hmm.
So in state law, most state law, it says that the parties are responsible for running the primaries. Does it say that here?
Yes.
So this was really apparent. A good example of this was Colorado. Mm-hmm. Remember in Colorado where the Secretary of State was saying, we're not going to put Trump on the ballot. Yep. And so the parties just said, well, go pound sand. We just won't use the state system. Then we'll run our own election. You have that same power. So all the primaries, you could run yourself and you don't even need to use the state system.
Yeah, we could do a caucus instead of a vote.
Why not? That's what they did. In Colorado, the Republican Party just said, pound sand, Secretary of State, we're going to run a caucus. And you could do the same thing. It's right in your state constitution that you have the right as a party to run your own primary. So might as well. That's not me, I don't think.
No, that's mine. I think it's ringing off the hook. But the problem I have is as I go around the state talking to other county chairs, state chairs, whoever, they're no more interested in solving the problem than a man on the moon. They don't think we have a problem. They say the same thing that the county commissioners.
Yeah.
And what they'll say, oh, I'm sure they have problems in Houston or Austin or Dallas, but we don't have any problems in my county.
That's why everywhere I go, I show people their own data. I did that last night, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I showed that you have exactly the same patterns in your roles as the rest of the state. And what's shocking to people, and I didn't show these data last night because, I have limited time. I think I showed it last time I was here. I can predict in your county, your tiny little Potter County, how many 18-year-olds vote, how many 19-year-old votes, how many 20-year-olds votes, et cetera, all the way up to 100. How can I possibly predict how many people are going to vote of every age? That doesn't make sense. I'm not really making a prediction. What I'm doing is I'm making an assumption. If I assume that the same proportion of 18-year-olds and the same proportion of 19-year-olds and the same vote in every county, I can suddenly predict your county. Well, wait a minute. You vote exactly the same as Harris? You vote exactly the same as Dallas? You vote no, you don't vote exactly the same as those people. You're a completely different makeup, a completely different demographic. It doesn't matter whether it's an urban or rural or Mexican or Chinese, black or white community. They should all vote differently. They have different demographics, different sociological different viewpoints and worldviews. They vote in different proportions. No, they don't. And that should send off a little alarm in your head. Wait a minute. How come we're voting exactly the same as all the others? That's strange. So I show those data to convince people locally. And I even showed you guys for yourself. Every one of your 72-year-olds voted. That's suspicious. Over 1,000 of them.
In Randall County, every 72-year-old voted.
Yeah. That doesn't make sense, does it? There's something up with that. And I picked that one. I don't want to get into the math. It's hard to talk about the math without pictures. But the math predicts how those curves are manipulated. And that's why I'm able to predict. Once I studied one county, I can predict all the others. And that is a perfect symptom. They inflate the rolls until one part of the curve hits the limit, and then they stop inflating it. And that's how they do it.
But I think we've had like 17 counties in Texas that had more people vote than we have registered voters.
I haven't investigated that, but I can tell you that is a common occurrence. I was just in Michigan, and multiple of their counties, with multiple of the precincts. So it would be like the county has a certain number of registered voters and in that case, the number of ballots was not more than the people. But when you went to the precinct level, like half of their precincts had more people voted than they have population in that precinct. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why doing the number search, going through and finding the statistics, that's why that's important. Because you show, in our sleepy little beautiful the one I just came from, small little county in Michigan, they have 30,000 people there, and they're like huge percentage of Amish and Mennonite people. I mean, it's a very conservative place. And they've got half of their precincts people, well, not half, maybe a third of them, had more people voted than they had people. It doesn't make sense. They're a conservative little place.
Well, when I tried to do this in 21, you'd have thought I murdered 50 people. I mean, I had the national media screaming at me. I mean, it went viral across the country. I'm like, why does anybody care about how we run our primary in Potter County, Texas, out in the middle of nowhere that nobody's ever heard of?
Why should they care?
Why would they care?
I showed you those hit pieces, a couple of them last night against me. I mean, they're spending big bucks. CNN sent a film crew. In fact, it was here in Texas. I was down in Williamson County. They sent a whole film crew down to film one of my events and a 45-minute long-form interview, and then featured me in the following night in primetime on CNN. Why do they care about some geek scientist with a bow tie talking about elections. Why do they care that much? But there's like major money being spent to suppress us. They don't want the cat out of the bag. They don't want little Potter County to run its own election, because if they do, it'll deviate from all the other counties, and then it will expose the fact that central control has taken place.
Well, that explains it. But CNN called an interview.
Yeah, see, they care.
And I talked to her for a long time. And the first thing, one of the things she asked me, she says, well, don't you think there was fraud? Do you think there was fraud in the 2020 election?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't have any idea. And she goes, what? Well, Trump thinks there's fraud. Don't you agree with Trump? I said, I don't have any idea if there was fraud.
Right.
I said, what, do you think there was fraud? And she says, well, I don't think so. I don't know. I said, all I want is an election system where nobody has to ask that question.
Right.
The fact that we are asking that question tells me we have the wrong system.
Right.
I just want a system that the voters can have confidence in. Because if the voters lose confidence in their elections,
right,
that means they've lost confidence in their elected officials and in their government.
Preach it.
And that has profound effects. Now, the rest of the world is losing confidence in the United States. Mm-hmm. They lose confidence in your bond market. Interest rates go up. And it all comes down to your elections, I believe. They're the most important thing we have in this country, and we have to get them right.
I think this battle is the point of the spear.
Yeah.
You know, I think you're right on target. I didn't tell this story last night, but I point out to people when David fought Goliath, that when he went to the battlefield, he wasn't there to fight Goliath. He went there to bring his brothers lunch. Okay. And the problem wasn't Goliath. The problem was when he showed up, that the children of Israel were hiding in the hills. The problem wasn't Goliath. The problem was the children of Israel were hiding in the hills. They were not addressing the problem. That's our problem with elections. Elections are really not the problem. The problem is that all of us are not taking action when there's a serious issue here. And we're complacent. We're apathetic.
We're out to lunch.
We're out to lunch. Yeah, exactly. And I always tell people, just like David, we need to find our stones, and we need to step up and fight Goliath. And then once we fight Goliath, then once David fought Goliath, then the children of Israel rose up and chased the Philistines out of the land. So we just need a few of us to stand up and be Davids and to find our stones and trust God to win the victory. Because this is really a symptom of our society, not the problem with our society. You know, you were running elections in 2006, and they were fine. But we've had a steady degradation of our culture. And dude, you're a farmer. You know, I grew up on an Angus ranch. We know the difference between an innie and an outie. Okay, but our culture has lost their way. I mean, it's crazy. How could we be so insane? I was in Oregon event several months ago, and I was speaking in a high school gym auditorium, and I had to go to the restroom. So I went in the restroom, and I thought I was in the wrong restroom because there was a tampon machine hanging on the wall. And I walked back out of the restroom and looked, no, it said men. So I went in and did my business. And when I came out, I talked to the organizer. I said, I thought I was in the wrong bathroom because there was a tampon machine hanging in the boys' bathroom. He said, no, you were in the right bathroom. He says, if you had been in the girls' bathroom, you would have tripped over a cat litter box. Okay. So how confused are we? Okay. As a culture. I mean, can you imagine if we had said that this was going to happen 10 years ago, people would have laughed in your face, you know, calling you a conspiracy wacko. And here we are. So that degradation, that complacency in our culture, elections are just a symptom of that. We've been paying other people for too many decades to run our government. We've been paying other people for too many decades to teach our children. We've been paying people for too many decades to run our elections. It needs to be us. We, the people, need to start being the government again. It's that simple.
Well, very good. I appreciate you coming, and I think that's a good way to end it. It's about we, the people.
Yes, sir. And I thank you for your engagement. We need patriots like you to stand and not shy away from the battle.
I'm not going to give up until we get it done.
Well, I'm in your foxhole with you, brother.
So we'll just keep at it till we get them informed and make it happen. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.